I never thought my own son would betray me like this. 3 years ago, when Walter died, Daniel convinced me to sell my home and move in with his family. It's temporary, Mom, he promised. But temporary turned into permanent when my bedroom became storage for his wife's designer clothes, and I was banished to the damp garage with my arthritis getting worse every day. I cook their meals. I watch their children. I do their laundry. And how do they repay me? I overheard them planning to dump me in Shady Pines retirement home. Mom's becoming difficult, Daniel told Vanessa. Difficult? For asking that my garage room have proper heating? But their betrayal cuts deeper. Daniel is secretly selling Walter's vintage motorcycle, the one thing my husband wanted me to keep. Vanessa parades around in my grandmother's jewelry she promised to keep safe. And I just discovered Daniel has been collecting rent from tenants in MY House, a house I legally still own because the deed transfer was never completed. For 3 years, I've swallowed my pride and suffered their disrespect. Not anymore. Before dawn on my birthday, I made a decision that would change everything. I adjusted the heat in my converted garage bedroom for the 10th time today, trying to ignore the musty smell of lawn equipment stored just a few feet from my bed. At 73, with arthritis creeping through my joints, this damp space was making everything worse. 3 years ago, after Walter passed, I never imagined this would be my life, sleeping on a narrow cot next to rakes and fertilizer bags while my son Daniel and his wife Vanessa lived comfortably in the 5-bedroom house I helped them buy. It's just temporary, Mom, Daniel had promised when he convinced me to sell my Victorian home and move in with them. Just until we finish the guest suite for you. That suite never materialized. Instead, my intended bedroom became an expansion of Vanessa's already massive closet to house her ever-growing collection of designer clothes and shoes. Through the thin plywood walls that separated the garage from the main house, I could hear their voices drifting in. They never seemed to consider that I might hear them. Daniel, darling, Vanessa's crisp voice cut through. I simply need more space for the summer collection. The closet is bursting. Daniel's reply made my heart sink. Maybe we could convert the garage into something more useful after Mom. You know, like a home gym. After Mom died, moved to a nursing home, I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders, not from the cold this time, but from the chill of their callousness. My gaze drifted to the small nightstand, really just a wooden crate painted white, where I kept my most precious possessions. A photo of Walter on his prized 1965 Triumph Bonneville motorcycle sat in a silver frame. That motorcycle had been his pride and joy. This beauty will be yours when I'm gone, Maggie, he'd told me. Freedom on 2 wheels. But after the funeral, Daniel had quickly stepped in. Mom, you can't possibly ride it. I'll keep it safe in my garage. Dad would want that. Now the motorcycle sat covered in the corner of the actual garage. Not this converted space I called a bedroom, gathering dust while I gathered resentment. Yesterday, while using Daniel's laptop to check my email, I didn't own a computer. I discovered a browser tab left open. The motorcycle listed for sale online for $18,000. My son was selling Walter's most treasured possession without even telling me. When I confronted him, he'd smiled that patronizing smile I'd grown to hate. Mom, you must be confused. I was just checking its value for insurance purposes. I wasn't confused. Not about this and not about the way they treated me. I forced myself up from the cot, wincing as my back protested. On the small shelf that served as my closet, I kept my clothes neatly folded, a stark contrast to Vanessa's overflowing wardrobe. I'd been raised to make do with less, to take care of what I had. Vanessa had been raised to take what she wanted, regardless of who it belonged to. The digital clock blinked 6:30 a.m. Time to start breakfast. That was my job now, cooking, cleaning, watching the grandchildren when needed. Unpaid labor in exchange for a roof over my head. A roof that leaked when it rained heavily. I slipped on my house shoes and shuffled to the main house, using my key to enter through the back door. The kitchen gleamed with expensive appliances I was barely allowed to touch. Be careful with the copper pans, Margaret, Vanessa had instructed me. They're imported from France. As I prepared the coffee just the way Daniel liked it, strong but with a hint of cinnamon, I noticed a date circled on the wall calendar. My birthday. Tomorrow I would turn 74, and I doubted anyone would remember. Last year Daniel had given me dish gloves. Practical, he'd said. Meanwhile, Vanessa's mother had received diamond earrings for her birthday the month before. The sound of footsteps startled me. Daniel appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work in his expensive suit. "Morning, Mom," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "Vanessa and I are hosting a dinner party tonight. Nothing fancy, just a few important clients. Could you help prepare something?" Vanessa suggested your chicken piccata. "No, please." No acknowledgement that I might have plans, just the assumption that I would be available to cook for his business associates. "Of course," I replied, the good mother I'd always been. "What time should it be ready?" 7. "Oh, and Mom, could you eat in your room tonight? Vanessa thinks 13 at the table is unlucky." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. It wasn't about superstition, it was about not wanting me at the table. I handed him his coffee, prepared perfectly as always. "Thanks," he said absently, turning to leave. "By the way, I need to talk to you about something important this weekend." "Nothing to worry about." He gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. After he left, I stood alone in the kitchen, clutching my own mug of tea. I knew what that important talk would be about. I'd seen the Shady Pines retirement home brochure in his office when I was dusting last week. My life had become small, confined to this house that wasn't my home, serving people who saw me as a burden. Walter would be heartbroken to see how his son treated me. Walter, who had loved me fiercely for 50 years. Who had taught me to ride that motorcycle when I was 23 against my parents' wishes. "Everyone needs a taste of freedom, Maggie," he'd said. I missed that freedom. I missed being seen as a whole person with dreams and desires, not just as an aging mother whose usefulness was measured in childcare hours and home-cooked meals. As I began pulling ingredients for breakfast, I heard Vanessa's voice again, thinking I couldn't hear her through the vents. "Did you talk to her?" she asked Daniel. "Not yet." "After the dinner party. No need to upset her before we need her to cook." "Good, my trainer says the garage would make an amazing home gym once it's emptied out. And honestly, she'll be better off at Shady Pines. My friend's mother loves it there." I nearly dropped the carton of eggs I was holding. Emptied out. That's what I had become to them, contents to be emptied, disposed of, replaced with exercise equipment. In that moment, something hardened inside me. I couldn't continue like this. I wouldn't. Tomorrow was my birthday, and perhaps it was time to give myself the gift of respect. The gift of freedom. I looked out the kitchen window toward the garage where Walter's motorcycle sat waiting. Maybe it was time to remember how to ride. I woke on the morning of my 74th birthday with a strange sense of calm. The garage was especially cold, my breath visible in the early dawn light filtering through the single dusty window. No one had mentioned my birthday yesterday. Not my son, not Vanessa, not even my grandchildren who had been coached to call me Grandma Margaret instead of just Grandma to differentiate me from Vanessa's mother, the real grandma in their household. I rose stiffly from my cot, my joints protesting after another night on the thin mattress. Last night's dinner party had gone perfectly, of course. I'd prepared chicken piccata for 12 guests while Vanessa took credit for the recipe. "Family secret," she told her impressed friends as I worked silently in the kitchen, invisible. I'd eaten alone in my garage room afterward, listening to the laughter and clinking glasses through the wall. Today would be different. Today I would take action. I dressed carefully in my most practical clothes, jeans that still fit from my gardening days, a warm sweater, sturdy shoes. I brushed my silver hair and secured it in a neat bun, applying just a touch of lipstick. I wanted to look like myself when I reclaimed my dignity. The house was still silent when I slipped in through the back door. Daniel and Vanessa would sleep late after their party. I moved quietly to the kitchen and prepared a pot of coffee as I always did, but today I wouldn't be here to serve it. On the counter, I left the lunch I'd prepared for them yesterday, a small final act of motherly care. My first destination was Daniel's home office. I knew he kept a spare key in the fake plant by the door. I'd seen him retrieve it once when he'd locked himself out. The office door opened smoothly and I stepped inside, feeling like an intruder in my son's domain. His desk was immaculate, every pen aligned, every paper in its place. Vanessa's influence, no doubt. The top drawer held what I was looking for, the keys to Walter's motorcycle, attached to the leather keychain I'd given him for our 40th anniversary. Beside it lay a folder labeled Mom's House. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside, I found the deed to my Victorian home, the home I'd lived in for 40 years, where I'd raised Daniel, where Walter and I had built our life together. I scanned the document, my eyes widening as I realized what I was seeing. The transfer of ownership had never been completed due to a clerical error. I still legally owned my house. More shocking were the bank statements showing monthly rent deposits from tenants living in my home, money Daniel had been collecting for 3 years without my knowledge. Nearly $90,000 in total. My stomach clenched with a mixture of anger and hurt. My own son had been essentially stealing from me while relegating me to a garage. What else had he taken? I made my way upstairs, past the closed door of the master bedroom where Daniel and Vanessa slept. I entered their enormous walk-in closet, my intended bedroom, taking in the rows of designer clothes, the custom shoe racks, the specialized handbag displays. So much excess while I lived with so little. At Vanessa's vanity, I opened her jewelry box. There, nestled among diamonds and pearls, was my grandmother's antique sapphire set, the necklace, earrings, and bracelet that had been passed down through generations of my family. I'd been told they were being kept safe in a deposit box, but here they were, worn by Vanessa to her social events without my permission. I took only what was rightfully mine, the jewelry, the motorcycle keys, the deed and bank statements, nothing more. In the garage, I gathered my few precious possessions, Walter's photo, our wedding album, my mother's Bible, some clothes. Everything fit into one suitcase and a backpack. 47 years of motherhood, and this was what I had to show for it. Back in my garage room, I sat on the edge of my cot, hands trembling as I dialed Aliner's number. Aliner had been my best friend since college, the one who'd stood by me through Walter's illness and death, the one who'd repeatedly invited me to join her at her coastal cottage instead of moving in with Daniel. "Happy birthday, Margaret," she answered cheerfully. "Aliner," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Is your offer still open? The cottage next door?" "Of course it is. I told you that place has your name written all over it. And the little gallery on Main Street is still for sale too. Remember how you always wanted to go back to painting?" As Aliner spoke, my eyes fell on an old leather-bound journal I'd recently rediscovered while organizing my few possessions. It was Walter's journal, where he'd written our someday plans, including opening a seaside art gallery for my paintings after he retired. Next to it was a faded photograph of myself in my 20s, standing in front of the exact coastal town where Aliner now lived. Walter and I had visited once, falling in love with its quiet beauty, promising to return someday. "It's not coincidence," I whispered, more to myself than to Aliner. "What's that, dear?" "Nothing," I said, wiping away a tear. "I've made a decision. I'm leaving today. Can you help me?" Aliner didn't ask questions, that's why I loved her. "Tell me what you need." We made arrangements quickly. She would meet me at a hotel in the coastal town tomorrow. She'd already spoken to the cottage owner and the gallery seller. Everything was falling into place as if the universe had been waiting for me to make this move. As I ended the call, I heard movement in the main house. Breakfast time. One last performance as the dutiful mother before I walked away. In the kitchen, Daniel was already at the table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when I entered. "Morning, Mom." "Coffee ready?" "Fresh pot," I replied, pouring him a cup. Vanessa glided in wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than all my clothes combined. "Is there any of that coffee for me?" she asked, as if I might refuse her. I handed her a mug without comment. Should I confront them now? Tell them I knew about the rent money, the jewelry, their plans to discard me? The words burned in my throat, but I swallowed them back. There would be time for confrontation later on my terms when I was safely away. "Daniel," I said casually, "don't forget I have my doctor's appointment this afternoon." "Right," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Will you be back in time to start dinner?" Of course, that's all that mattered to him. "I should be," I lied. By the way, I noticed the motorcycle in the garage needs some maintenance. The cover was slipping off. Don't touch it, Mom. I'll take care of it. Take care of it by selling it, you mean, I thought, but simply nodded. Oh, and Margaret, Vanessa added, stirring her coffee, we need to talk to you this weekend about some changes around here. Nothing to worry about. I met her gaze steadily. Actually, I've been thinking about some changes myself. The hint of worry that crossed her face gave me a small, guilty pleasure. As I returned to the garage to finalize my preparations, I felt lighter than I had in years. Tonight, while they attended yet another social engagement, I would wheel Walter's motorcycle down the driveway and disappear from their lives. By the time they realized I was gone, I would be well on my way to reclaiming not just my possessions, but my dreams, and on my cot I would leave a note. Gone to reclaim my life. Don't look for me. I spent the day going through the motions, preparing for my escape while pretending everything was normal. After breakfast, I cleaned the kitchen and did a load of laundry one last time. I folded Daniel's shirts the way he liked and put away Vanessa's delicate blouses with care. Strange to be providing these maternal comforts while planning my departure. At lunch, I told them I was heading to my doctor's appointment. Neither looked up from their phones. Don't forget we have the Henderson's charity gala tonight, Vanessa reminded Daniel. Black tie. Perfect. They would be gone for hours, giving me plenty of time. Instead of going to the doctor, I went to the bank. The teller looked concerned when I asked to close my account. Are you sure, Mrs. Wilson? You've banked with us for 30 years. I'm sure, I replied, requesting the balance in cash. It wasn't much. My Social Security went mostly to household expenses, according to Daniel, but it was enough to get me started. Next, I visited my old friend Harriet, who'd been storing a few boxes of my personal belongings since I'd sold my house. Items too precious to risk in the garage but not wanted in Daniel's minimalist home. I've been wondering when you'd come for these, she said, helping me carry them to her porch. Eleanor called me. I know what you're doing and I think Walter would be proud. I hugged her tightly. Thank you for understanding. Just promise you'll send me your address when you're settled and take this. She pressed a small wrapped package into my hands. Happy birthday, Margaret. Inside was a watercolor set, professional quality. For your new beginning, the card read. Back at the house, Daniel and Vanessa were getting ready for their gala. I slipped unnoticed into the garage and began sorting through my few possessions one last time, separating what would come with me from what would stay behind. Among my books, I found Walter's old leather journal again and opened it randomly. His handwriting jumped out at me. Maggie deserves that seaside gallery. After all she sacrificed for our family, it's the least I can do. I've already spoken to the real estate agent in Harbor Point. My breath caught. Harbor Point, where Eleanor lived now. Walter had been making plans for us before his illness took over. Plans I knew nothing about. Plans that never materialized because he got sick, and then he was gone, and then Daniel convinced me to sell the house and move in with him. I flipped through more pages, finding notes about gallery spaces, cottage listings, even names of local artists Walter thought I could feature alongside my own work. He had believed in my art when I'd given it up to raise our family. Mom, we're leaving, Daniel called from the door connecting the garage to the house. I quickly tucked the journal into my backpack. Have a good time, I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. There's leftovers in the fridge if you get hungry, I added, knowing I wouldn't be there to eat them. Thanks, don't wait up. The door closed and I sat in silence, listening to their expensive car pull out of the driveway. Then I got to work. First, I changed into warm layers for the motorcycle ride. Then I gathered my prepared bags and placed them near the garage door. I'd already measured everything to make sure it would fit on the motorcycle with me. I removed the cover from Walter's Triumph Bonneville. The metallic blue paint still gleamed despite years of neglect. I ran my hand over the leather seat where Walter and I had once traveled across 3 states on our 10th anniversary, where he had taught me to ride, laughing at my initial terror and then beaming with pride when I mastered it. Freedom on 2 wheels, Maggie, he'd said. I checked the fuel gauge, half tank, enough to get me to the gas station. I tested the brakes, checked the lights. Walter had taught me basic maintenance too. Always know your machine, he'd insisted. While waiting for full darkness, I wrote my note. Simple and direct, gone to reclaim my life, don't look for me. I placed it on my cot alongside all the birthday and Christmas gifts they'd given me over the past 3 years. Practical items mostly, dish gloves, a bathrobe, a subscription to a meal planning magazine. Nothing personal, nothing that showed they knew who I really was. I kept only what was truly mine. My clothes, my few books, Walter's journal, our photo albums, my grandmother's jewelry, and the deed to my house. Everything fit in 2 bags. At 10:30 p.m., I received a text from Daniel. Gala running late, don't lock the door, might forget my key. Perfect. They wouldn't be home for hours. At 11:00 p.m., I carefully unlocked the big garage door and with some effort rolled Walter's motorcycle down the driveway to the street. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I secured my bags to the back of the bike with bungee cords just as Walter had taught me. I looked back at the house one last time. 3 years of my life reduced to a converted garage and bitter memories. I should have felt sadness, but all I felt was relief. With the motorcycle positioned on the street, I took a deep breath and inserted the key. The engine caught immediately, purring to life as if it had been waiting for me. The vibration traveled up through my hands, into my arms, awakening something long dormant inside me. I adjusted my position on the seat, feeling for that perfect balance point. It had been decades since I'd ridden, but my body remembered. I released the brake and gently turned the throttle. The motorcycle moved forward smoothly, carrying me away from Daniel's house, away from the garage bedroom, away from 3 years of diminishment and disrespect. At the corner, I paused to put on the helmet I'd found hanging in the garage. Safety first, Walter would have said. Then I accelerated into the night, following the route I'd memorized to the interstate that would take me to Alina, to the coast, to my new life. The wind whipped around me, cold but exhilarating. Streetlights streaked past in blurs of gold. The engine's steady rumble beneath me felt like a heartbeat, like Walter's presence guiding me forward. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. 74 years old, arthritis in my knees, riding a motorcycle in the middle of the night toward an uncertain future. And yet I had never been more sure of anything in my life. I thought about Daniel waking up tomorrow, finding the garage empty, my note on the cot. Would he be angry, worried? Would he finally understand what he'd done? It didn't matter anymore. I was no longer defining myself by my role as his mother. I was Margaret Wilson, artist, motorcyclist, woman reclaiming her life. At a red light, I glanced down at my wedding ring, still on my finger after all these years. I'm doing it, Walter, I whispered. I'm finding our someday. The light turned green and I accelerated forward, leaving behind the life that had become too small for me. Ahead lay Harbor Point, the coastal town where Walter and I had once dreamed of retiring. Where Alina waited. Where a cottage stood empty next door to hers. Where a small gallery on Main Street was for sale. My arthritis ached from the vibration of the motorcycle, but I ignored it. Physical pain was nothing compared to the soul-deep pain of being treated as an inconvenience by my own son. Besides, the farther I rode from Daniel's house, the lighter I felt. I had enough cash to stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, I would call the bank where my house's rent money had been deposited. I would speak to a lawyer about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I would start making phone calls about that gallery. But tonight was about the journey, about the feel of Walter's motorcycle beneath me, carrying me toward freedom. About the stars overhead and the wind in my face and the knowledge that at 74 I was not finished. I was just beginning. I reached Harbor Point just before dawn, exhausted but exhilarated. The coastal town was beginning to wake as I pulled into the parking lot of the Seaside Inn, a small hotel Alina had recommended. My body ached from the long ride, my hands stiff from gripping the handlebars, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. At the front desk, a kind-faced woman looked up from her computer. "Welcome to Harbor Point. Checking in?" "Yes, reservation under Margaret Wilson." She smiled as she handed me the key. "Room 212, second floor, ocean view. Your friend Alina called to make sure everything was ready for you." Alina, always thinking ahead. I texted her when I stopped for gas, letting her know I was safe and on my way. In my room, I drew back the curtains to reveal the Atlantic Ocean, vast and shimmering in the early morning light. So different from the view of my son's manicured lawn that I'd woken to for the past 3 years. I placed Walter's photograph on the nightstand, positioning it so he could see the ocean too. I showered away the road dust and changed into fresh clothes before collapsing onto the bed. I'd been awake for nearly 24 hours, but sleep wouldn't come. My phone had been buzzing periodically with texts from Daniel, starting with irritation, moving to confusion, and finally alarm. Mom, where are you? Mom, this isn't funny. Mom, I'm calling the police if you don't answer. I silenced the phone without responding. Let him worry. Let him feel a fraction of the anxiety I'd felt living under his roof, never knowing when I'd be discarded. At 9 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. Eleanor stood there, arms outstretched, her face a map of familiar lines and warmth. Margaret Wilson, you magnificent rebel, she said, pulling me into a hug. I can't believe you actually did it. Over breakfast in the hotel restaurant, I told her everything, the discoveries in Daniel's office, the motorcycle escape, the plans forming in my mind. The cottage next door to mine is still available, Eleanor said, spreading jam on her toast. And the gallery on Main Street too. The owner is eager to sell. Her arthritis is worse than yours. I need to call a lawyer first, I replied. About the house, the rent money, I need to secure what's mine before I can move forward. Eleanor nodded. I have someone in mind. My nephew James practices elder law. He can help with everything. By noon, I was sitting in James's office, spreading documents across his desk, the deed to my house, the bank statements showing rent deposits, photos of my grandmother's jewelry. James, a serious man with kind eyes, reviewed everything carefully. Your son had no legal right to collect rent on property you still own, he said. And the jewelry is clearly your inheritance. We can recover all of this. I don't want to drain his accounts or cause a scandal, I said. I just want what's mine. Of course, James replied, making notes. We'll start with a demand letter. Often that's enough to resolve these situations quickly. As I left his office, my phone rang again. Daniel. I hesitated, then answered. Mom, where the hell are you? His voice was tight with anger. We came home and found your note and Dad's motorcycle gone. Are you okay? What were you thinking? I'm fine, Daniel, I said calmly. I've left to start a new life. A new life? You're 74 years old. You can't just take Dad's motorcycle and disappear. It's my motorcycle, Daniel. Walter left it to me, not you. Just like he left me the house that you've been collecting rent on without my knowledge. Silence on the other end then. Mom, you're confused. The house sale was completed 3 years ago. No, it wasn't. The deed transfer was never filed. I have the documents right in front of me along with bank statements showing $90,000 in rent deposits to your account. More silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Come home and we can sort this out. I am home, Daniel, or I will be soon. I'm buying a cottage and a small art gallery here in Harbor Point. An art gallery? Mom, this is ridiculous. You haven't painted in decades. Because I was too busy taking care of everyone else. That changes now. Where are you getting the money for this fantasy? His voice was dismissive. From the rent you owe me, from the sale of my house, which is still legally mine, and from my own savings that you've been managing for me. Another long pause. This isn't like you, Mom. You're acting irrationally. Is Eleanor putting these ideas in your head? She's always been a bad influence. I laughed at that, actually laughed. The only bad influence in my life has been living in a garage while my bedroom became your wife's closet. The only irrational thing I've done was giving up my independence to move in with you. We gave you a place to live. We took care of you. No, Daniel, I took care of you. I cooked your meals, cleaned your house, watched your children. And how did you repay me? By planning to ship me off to Shady Pines while turning my garage into a gym. You eavesdropped on our private conversation. Now he sounded indignant. Hard not to hear through those thin walls. Tell me, were you ever going to discuss it with me or just present it as a fait accompli? Mom, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Come home and we can talk about it. I'm not coming back, Daniel. James Hoffman will be contacting you about recovering my property and the rent money you owe me. I suggest you cooperate. You're bringing in lawyers against your own son. You left me no choice. Goodbye, Daniel. I ended the call, hands shaking but heart steady. Eleanor waited nearby, concern written on her face. Are you okay? She asked. Better than okay, I replied. I feel like myself for the first time in years. We spent the afternoon looking at the cottage next door to hers, a charming two-bedroom with a small garden and a view of the harbor. The price was reasonable, especially once I recovered my funds from Daniel. I can see you here, Alina said as we stood on the porch. Painting in that sunroom, drinking coffee in this garden. I could see it too. I could feel Walter's approval, almost as tangible as the sea breeze on my face. Later, we visited the gallery on Main Street. Small but well lit with high ceilings and good wall space. The current owner, Martha, showed us around with obvious pride. I've had this place for 20 years, she said. Hate to give it up, but these hands don't work like they used to. She held up gnarled fingers, evidence of severe arthritis. I understand, I said, showing her my own slightly twisted hands. But I can still hold a brush. You an artist? Martha asked. I will be again. She nodded, seeming satisfied. Good, this place needs an artist's touch, not some corporation turning it into another tourist trap. As we walked back to the hotel, Alina linked her arm through mine. I knew you still had fire in you, Margaret. I saw it even when you didn't. Back in my room, I opened Walter's journal again, reading his plans for our seaside retirement. He had believed in my art, in my strength, in me. It was time I believed in myself too. I took out the watercolor set Harriet had given me and sat by the window, watching the ocean. My first brush stroke was hesitant, the second more confident. By the third, I was painting with a freedom I hadn't felt in decades, capturing the sunset over the harbor in bold strokes of orange and purple. When my phone rang again, I checked the caller ID. Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever manipulation or guilt trip she had planned, I wouldn't hear it. Not today. Today was for painting, for planning, for reclaiming. Tomorrow would be soon enough to face the complications of my new life. Right now, all that mattered was the canvas before me, the ocean beyond my window, and the quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. Walter's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Freedom on two wheels, Maggie. And now freedom on canvas too." Daniel arrived unannounced at my hotel room 3 days later. I was returning from breakfast with Alina when I saw him packing in the lobby, his expensive suit wrinkled from travel, dark circles under his eyes. "Mom," he said when he spotted me, relief and anger battling in his voice. Finally, I maintained my composure though my heart raced. "How did you find me?" Alina's Facebook page. She checked in at the hotel restaurant and tagged you. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "You can't just disappear like that. I filed a missing persons report." "I'm not missing, Daniel. I left a note. Gone to reclaim my life is not an explanation." His voice rose, drawing curious glances from the front desk staff. "You took Dad's motorcycle, family heirlooms, and documents from my office. That's theft." "Nothing I took belongs to you," I replied calmly. "The motorcycle was Walter's gift to me. The jewelry is my family heirloom, not Vanessa's accessory. And those documents prove you've been collecting rent on property I still legally own." His face flushed. "Let's not discuss this in public. Can we go to your room?" In my room, Daniel paced while I sat calmly in the armchair by the window, the ocean visible behind me. My half-finished painting still stood on the improvised easel I'd created from the desk and a chair. "You're painting again?" he asked, momentarily distracted. "Yes, I never should have stopped." He shook his head, refocusing. "Mom, I came to bring you home. This little adventure has gone far enough. You're not thinking clearly." "I've never thought more clearly in my life." "You're 74 years old. You can't just ride off on a motorcycle and start a new life." "Why not?" "Because it's inconvenient for you. Because it doesn't fit your image of what a proper mother should be. Because it's irresponsible," he exploded. "You have arthritis. You need care. I was the one providing care in your house, Daniel, cooking, cleaning, childcare, all while living in a garage and being treated like an unwanted house guest. We gave you a home when you had nowhere else to go. I had options. Alina invited me here 3 years ago, but you convinced me family should stay together, that it would be temporary until the guest suite was ready. That suite that became Vanessa's closet. Mom, be reasonable. We didn't have space. You have 5 bedrooms, Daniel, 5, but not one for your mother." He sighed, changing tactics. "Look, I understand you're upset. We could have communicated better about the living arrangements. But taking Dad's motorcycle and running away isn't the answer. It's my motorcycle, and I didn't run away, I reclaimed my independence. And what about the rent money? Are you really going to sue your own son? I stood, walking to the desk where I'd placed the folder of documents. James has prepared this settlement agreement. It states that you'll transfer the back rent to my account, complete the proper paperwork acknowledging my ownership of the house, and return any other items of mine still in your possession. In exchange, I won't pursue legal action for elder financial abuse. Elder abuse? He looked genuinely shocked. Mom, I was managing your affairs. You asked me to. I asked you to help me, not steal from me, not relegate me to the garage while planning to ship me off to a nursing home. His face fell. You heard that conversation. Every word. Tell me, Daniel, was that your plan all along? Wait until I was dependent on you, then discard me when I became inconvenient. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. Shady Pines is a nice place. My colleague's mother loves it there. Did you ever ask what I would love? Did you ever consider what I wanted? He had no answer for that. Sign the agreement, Daniel, I said, pushing the folder toward him, or James will file the elder abuse claim tomorrow. Your choice. He skimmed the document, face darkening. This is extortion. This is justice. I'm not asking for anything that isn't rightfully mine. And what about our relationship? You're my mother. Yes, I am, and I deserved better from my son. He stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out a pen and signed. Fine, take the money, take the house. Is that what Dad would have wanted, for you to turn against your family? I walked to the nightstand and picked up Walter's journal, opening to a marked page. 2 months before he died, your father wrote this. Daniel is becoming more like Vanessa's family every day. Status obsessed. Materialistic. I worry about Maggie after I'm gone. I've spoken to a leaner about the cottage next door to hers. It would be perfect for Maggie's fresh start. Daniel paled. Dad wrote that? He knew who you were becoming. He tried to protect me, but his illness progressed too quickly. I closed the journal. I'm not turning against family, Daniel. I'm honoring your father's wishes for me, and my own wishes for myself. He stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller. What do you want from me now? I want you to respect my decision. I'm buying the cottage next door to Aliner's and the small gallery on Main Street. I'm going to paint again. I'm going to live the life your father and I dreamed of before it's too late. And us, will I ever see you again? The question hung in the air between us. Despite everything, he was still my son, the baby I had nursed, the boy I had raised. That depends on you, I said finally. On whether you can see me as a person with my own dreams and needs, not just as a convenient grandmother and housekeeper. He nodded slowly, some understanding finally dawning in his eyes. And Vanessa, I think it's best if we take some time apart. She never wanted me in your home to begin with. That's not true, he protested, but weakly. We both know it is. I stood, signaling our conversation was ending. The settlement requires the money to be transferred within 48 hours. Once that's done, I'll send you the address of my new home. What happens after that is up to you. Daniel gathered his briefcase, looking lost in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child. At the door, he paused. The motorcycle, it really meant that much to you? It's not just a motorcycle, Daniel. It's freedom. It's the memory of your father teaching me to ride when I was terrified. It's the promise of adventures we never got to have. I smiled slightly. Walter always said everyone needs freedom on two wheels. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps of the father he'd once known before status and appearances became his priority. I remember him saying that, he said quietly. When I was 10, he taught me to ride a bicycle without training wheels. He said the same thing. He was a wise man. Daniel nodded, then opened the door. I'll make the transfer today, he said. And Mom, I am sorry, not for everything, but for enough that it matters. After he left, I stood at the window watching the ocean. The confrontation had gone better than I'd expected. No shouting, no threats beyond the initial bluster. Perhaps somewhere inside the status-conscious man was still the boy Walter and I had raised. Alina called an hour later. I saw Daniel in the lobby. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. He signed the agreement. So it's really happening. The cottage, the gallery? Yes, I said, looking at my half-finished painting. It's really happening. Later that afternoon, I rode Walter's motorcycle to the cottage next to Aliner's. It was even more charming in the soft afternoon light, white clapboard with blue shutters, a small garden in front, a porch facing the harbor. Inside was small but perfect. A living room with a fireplace, a kitchen with a breakfast nook, two bedrooms, and a sunroom perfect for painting. Standing in that sunroom, I could almost feel Walter beside me, his hand on my shoulder, his voice in my ear. "See, Maggie, this is what I wanted for you all along." The real estate agent smiled as I signed the preliminary paperwork. "The owner is delighted to sell to a local artist," she said. "She's been worried about developers buying it up." "It's not just a house," I told her. "It's a dream I'm reclaiming." That evening, as the sun set over the harbor, I sat on the hotel balcony finishing my painting. Alina brought wine and we toasted to new beginnings. "To freedom on two wheels," I said, raising my glass. "And to Margaret Wilson, artist and rebel," Alina added. "May your second act be even better than the first." I thought of the gallery I would soon own, the paintings I would create, the life I would build. I thought of Walter's journal and the dreams we had shared. I thought of Daniel and the relationship we might or might not rebuild. But mostly I thought about the woman I was becoming, not just a mother, not just a widow, but a whole person with dreams and desires and the courage to pursue them. At 74, my life wasn't ending. It was finally, truly beginning. 6 months passed like a dream. My gallery, Second Chances, opened on a perfect spring morning. I stood in the center of the renovated space, sunlight streaming through the large windows, illuminating the paintings that lined the walls. My paintings alongside works from other senior artists I'd discovered in the community. The settlement money from Daniel had arrived as promised, allowing me to purchase both the cottage and the gallery outright. My old Victorian house was now properly listed for sale with a reputable agent. The back rent Daniel returned had funded the renovations and provided a comfortable cushion for my new beginning. My cottage next door to Alina's had become a true home. The sunroom was now my studio, filled with canvases, paints, and the scent of linseed oil. Through the windows, I could see the harbor, different every day with the changing light and tides. Walter's motorcycle had its own special place in a small shed I had built, carefully maintained and taken out for rides along the coast on good weather days. The arthritis in my hands still bothered me, especially on damp mornings, but I'd found that regular painting actually helped. The gentle movement kept my fingers limber in a way that cooking and cleaning for Daniel's family never had. And when the pain was bad, I simply switched from oils to watercolors, which required a lighter touch. Alina knocked on the gallery door early for the grand opening. "It's perfect, Margaret," she said, looking around the space. "Absolutely perfect." "It feels like a dream," I admitted. "One I never thought I'd realize." "Walter would be so proud," she said, squeezing my arm. "Speaking of which, there's someone outside who wants to see you." My heart skipped a beat. "Daniel?" Alina nodded. "He called yesterday, asked if it would be okay to come to the opening." "I told him that was your decision, but he decided to come early to talk to you first." I smoothed my dress, a new one bought with my own money in a bright teal that complemented my silver hair. "Send him in." Daniel entered hesitantly, looking different than I remembered, less polished somehow. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by casual pants and a button-down shirt. He'd lost weight and a touch of gray had appeared at his temples. "Mom," he said, standing awkwardly just inside the door. "Your gallery, it's beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, uncertain where we stood after 6 months of minimal contact. We'd exchanged a few texts, a couple of brief phone calls, but nothing substantial. "I brought you something," he said, holding out a small wrapped package. "A gallery-warming gift, I guess." I opened it carefully. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before, Walter and me on the motorcycle, laughing, my hair blowing in the wind. I must have been in my 30s, Daniel just a boy. "Where did you find this?" I asked, throat tight with emotion. "In Dad's old albums. I've been going through them, trying to remember the father he really was, not the one I've been pretending he was." Daniel looked around the gallery. He talked about this, about you having a gallery someday. I never listened. No, you didn't, I said quietly but without anger. You were busy becoming someone else. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. I've been in therapy, he said unexpectedly. After you left, after I realized what we'd done to you, I started seeing someone. Vanessa and I both did. This surprised me. Vanessa, too. She's not here today, Daniel said quickly. She understood this needed to be just us. But yes, she's been going too. We've had some hard conversations about the people we were becoming. I gestured to two chairs near the window. Tell me. As we sat, Daniel looked directly at me, something he'd rarely done in those last years. After you left, I was angry at first, felt justified in everything. But then I read Dad's journal, the copy you left for me, and I talked to Aunt Alina. He smiled wryly. She didn't hold back. She never does, I agreed. She made me see how we'd treated you, how I'd treated you. I started remembering the father Dad really was, how he valued experiences over possessions, how he always put family first, not appearances. His voice broke slightly. I've been trying to find my way back to being that kind of person. And Vanessa, Daniel sighed. That's been harder. Her family measures everything by status and appearance, but she's trying. We sold the big house, actually, downsized to something more reasonable. This truly shocked me. You sold the house, he nodded. Too many bad memories, too many reminders of how we treated you. We found a smaller place closer to the kids' school. 3 bedrooms, one for us, one for the kids, and one for guests. He met my eyes, including you if you ever want to visit, a real bedroom, not a garage. I studied my son's face, looking for signs of the entitled man who had relegated his mother to the garage. What I saw instead was echoes of the boy I'd raised, the one who had once valued kindness over status. The children ask about you, he said. They miss their grandmother. I've missed them too, I admitted. The grandchildren had been innocent in all this. My quarrel had never been with them. Outside, I could see people beginning to gather for the gallery opening. I should get ready, I said, standing. Daniel stood too. Can I stay for the opening? I'd like to see your work, see this life you've built. I considered for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I'd like that. The opening was a success beyond my expectations. The local arts community turned out in force, along with curious townspeople and tourists. 3 of my paintings sold within the first hour. I moved through the crowd, explaining my work, connecting with other artists, feeling more alive than I had in decades. Daniel stayed quiet but attentive, watching me in this new role not as his mother, but as Margaret Wilson, artist and gallery owner. I caught him studying my centerpiece painting with particular intensity. A 74-year-old woman on a vintage motorcycle, racing along a coastal highway at sunrise. A transparent figure rode alongside her, Walter's spirit, encouraging her journey. It's her second act, I overheard a patron explaining to her friend. Starting fresh at 74, isn't that inspiring? When the crowd thinned, Daniel approached me again. That painting, the motorcycle one, it's incredible, Mom. I never knew you could paint like this. There's a lot you never knew about me, I replied, but gently this time. I'd like to change that, he said, if you'll let me. Later, after the last visitors had gone, Alina, Daniel, and I sat on the gallery's small back porch watching the sunset over the harbor. Alina had brought champagne, and we toasted to new beginnings. To second chances, Alina said, raising her glass. To Dad, Daniel added. And the wisdom we should have listened to sooner. To freedom on 2 wheels, I finished, and the journey still ahead. As darkness fell, Alina tactfully excused herself, leaving Daniel and me alone with the stars and the sound of waves. Would you like to come for dinner next weekend? I asked finally. Alina is teaching me to make paella. She says I'm a quick study. Daniel smiled, genuine warmth reaching his eyes. I'd like that very much. Could I bring the kids? They would love to see you. Just the kids, I said firmly. Vanessa and I need more time. He nodded, accepting my boundary. That's fair. More than fair, actually. As he prepared to leave, Daniel paused by the motorcycle shed. Do you really still ride it? Every chance I get. Alina too, I've been teaching her. He laughed, a startled, genuine sound. Dad would love that. Yes, I agreed. He would. After Daniel left, I stood alone in my gallery, surrounded by my art, my vision, my reclaimed dreams. At 74, I had started over, rebuilt a life on my own terms. The broken relationship with my son was beginning to heal, but on a foundation of mutual respect this time, not obligation. I walked to the centerpiece painting, the woman on the motorcycle, and touched the corner where I'd signed it, Margaret Wilson. Not mom, not widow, but my own name, my own identity. Outside, the moon cast a silver path across the harbor waters. Tomorrow, if the weather held, I would take the motorcycle out along the coastal road, Alina following on her newly purchased scooter. We would feel the wind in our hair and the years falling away. We would remember that age was just a number, that it was never too late to reclaim your life, your dreams, your sense of self. I looked around once more at the gallery that Walter and I had once dreamed of, that I had finally brought to life. Then I turned out the lights and walked the short path to my cottage, where the porch light welcomed me home. My home, my life, my second chance.